The wind howled across the cold mountains, carrying the smell of smoke and fear. Deep inside a dark valley, a huge creature lay weak on the ground. Her giant wings were torn, and her shining scales were scratched and burned. She was a dragon, but not the terrifying monster humans imagined. She was a mother. The mama dragon curled her long body around a single glowing egg. The egg was warm, bright, and alive. Inside it, her baby moved slowly, waiting to be born. The dragon let out a low, painful cry that echoed through the rocks. She had been begging for help for days. Her powerful voice had reached nearby towns and villages, but no one came. People heard the sound and became afraid. Stay away from the mountains, the villagers warned each other. A dragon lives there. It will burn everything. Hunters tried to approach once, but when they saw the wounded dragon breathing weak flames, they ran away in terror. To them, she was a monster. To her baby, she was the only protection in the world. Hours passed. The sun slowly disappeared behind thick clouds, turning the sky dark purple. The mama dragon looked at the egg again. The shell had started to crack a little. The baby would hatch soon. But the dragon was dying. A deep wound on her side bled slowly. Hunters had attacked her days ago, thinking they were protecting their lands. They did not know she had only been protecting her unborn child. Her breathing became heavier. If she died before the egg hatched, the baby dragon would freeze in the cold mountain night. She lowered her head beside the egg and cried again, weaker this time. Far away, in a small human town at the bottom of the mountain, a man named Henry was finishing his late shift. Henry was not a hero. He was not a soldier or a hunter. He was only a janitor. Every night he cleaned the large research building in town. Scientists studied strange animals and ancient creatures there. Henry quietly pushed his cleaning cart through empty halls while everyone else went home. He hummed softly while he worked. It helped him pass the time. Henry lived a simple life. He had no family and very few friends. But he had something special that most people didn't notice. He had a kind heart. That night, as Henry stepped outside the building, he heard something strange. A deep, distant cry rolled across the night air. It sounded like thunder, but sadder. Henry looked toward the mountains. There it is again, he murmured. For the last 2 nights he had heard the same sound. Most people ignored it. Some people said it was just the wind. But Henry felt something different when he heard it. Pain. The cry came again, weaker this time. Henry frowned. That doesn't sound like a monster, he whispered. It sounded like someone begging. Most people would have gone home. But Henry couldn't ignore the feeling in his chest. Without thinking too much, he grabbed a flashlight from his locker and started walking toward the mountain path. The road became rough and dark. Cold air rushed down the slopes. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. After almost an hour of climbing, Henry saw something glowing faintly between the rocks ahead. He slowly stepped closer. Then he froze. His flashlight fell from his hand. A dragon lay in front of him. Her body was enormous. Her wings stretched across the stones like broken sails. Her golden eyes looked tired and full of pain. Henry's heart began to pound. Every story he had ever heard about dragons screamed in his mind. Run. Run now. But the dragon didn't attack. She didn't roar. She simply looked at him, and lowered her head. Beside her body, Henry saw the glowing egg. The shell cracked again. A tiny light moved inside. Henry's fear slowly turned into shock. Oh no, he whispered. The dragon lifted her head slightly and let out a soft, desperate cry. It was not a threat. It was a plea. Henry looked at the deep wound on her side. Blood covered the rocks. You're hurt, he said quietly. The dragon blinked slowly. For a long moment, neither of them moved. A human janitor, and a dying dragon mother. 2 worlds that were never meant to meet. Then something unexpected happened. The mama dragon slowly pushed the glowing egg toward Henry with her claw. Henry stared in disbelief. You want me to help? The dragon's breathing became weaker. Her giant head lowered until it rested on the ground. Henry swallowed hard. He had no idea how to help a dragon. But he knew one thing. If he walked away now, the baby would die. Henry looked at the cracked egg again. Inside it, a tiny claw pushed against the shell. The baby was trying to hatch. Henry took a deep breath. Well, this is probably the craziest thing I've ever done, he muttered. Slowly, carefully, he stepped closer. The dragon watched him with tired eyes but did not move. Henry knelt beside the glowing egg. It was warm, almost like holding sunlight. Another crack appeared on the shell. Suddenly the ground shook slightly. The mama dragon lifted her head weakly and looked toward the dark sky. Henry followed her gaze. Far away in the clouds, shadows moved. Huge shadows. Wings. More dragons. But these were not coming to help. Their shapes were sharp and aggressive. Predators. Henry felt cold fear crawl down his spine. They're coming for the egg, he whispered. The mama dragon tried to stand, but her wounded body collapsed again. She was too weak to fight. The egg cracked louder. A tiny dragon cry came from inside. Henry looked at the sky, then at the helpless mother. In that moment he realized something terrifying. If those dragons arrived first, the baby would never live long enough to see the sunrise. Henry picked up the glowing egg with shaking hands. The mama dragon watched him carefully. I promise, Henry said quietly. I won't let them take your baby. But the shadows in the sky were getting closer, and Henry had just seconds to decide something impossible. Henry held the glowing egg tightly against his chest as the cold wind rushed across the mountain. The cracks on the shell were growing larger, and the small life inside was moving more urgently now. Above him, the dark shapes in the sky were getting closer. Their wings cut through the clouds like giant blades. Henry looked up and his stomach twisted with fear. 3 dragons. But these dragons were different from the wounded mother lying behind him. Their scales were dark and rough, their eyes glowing with a hungry red light. They circled slowly in the sky like vultures. They had smelled the egg. Henry looked back at the mama dragon. Her huge golden eyes were barely open now. Her breathing was slow and weak, but she was watching him. Watching the egg. Watching her baby. Henry understood something in that silent moment. She trusted him now. A complete stranger, a small human janitor, was the last hope for her child. The egg suddenly cracked louder in Henry's arms. A thin glowing line split across the shell. Henry swallowed nervously. Okay, little guy, he whispered. Maybe this is not the best time to hatch. A loud roar exploded across the sky. The first dark dragon dove downward, its massive wings shaking the air. Rocks rolled down the mountain as it landed heavily on a nearby cliff. The other 2 dragons circled above, waiting. Henry's heart raced. He slowly stepped backward, holding the egg carefully. The dark dragon lowered its giant head and sniffed the air. Its long teeth shined like knives in the moonlight. Then its red eyes locked onto Henry. For a moment, everything became silent. Then the dragon roared again. Henry turned and ran. The mountain path was rough and steep. His shoes slipped on loose stones as he hurried down the slope. Behind him, the sound of giant wings exploded into the air again. The dragon had taken flight. Henry didn't dare look back. The egg suddenly shook in his arms. Crack! Another piece of the shell broke. A tiny claw pushed out through the glowing shell. Henry nearly tripped in surprise. Oh great, you picked the worst moment, he said breathlessly. A loud blast of hot air rushed over his head. The dark dragon swooped low above him, its wings creating a violent wind that knocked Henry to the ground. He rolled across the rocks but kept the egg protected against his chest. The dragon landed in front of him with a thunderous crash. Its huge body blocked the path. Henry froze. The creature stared at the glowing egg, its long tongue sliding between its teeth. It wasn't angry. It was hungry. The egg glowed brighter, and suddenly the shell split wider. A tiny dragon head pushed out. Its scales were soft and golden like sunlight. Its small eyes blinked slowly as it looked around the world for the first time. The baby dragon chirped softly. The sound was small, innocent, and completely helpless. The dark dragon leaned closer. Henry's mind raced. He was not a fighter. He had never even held a weapon before. He was just a janitor. But at that moment, something inside him refused to give up. Henry grabbed a loose rock from the ground and threw it with all his strength at the dragon's eye. The rock bounced harmlessly off the creature's thick scales. The dragon growled. Henry sighed nervously. Yeah, that didn't work. The dragon opened its mouth. Heat gathered deep in its throat. Fire. Henry closed his eyes for a second. Well, this was a short adventure. But before the dragon could attack, a sudden blast of golden light exploded behind them. The ground shook violently. A massive roar echoed across the mountain. Henry opened his eyes. The mama dragon was standing. Somehow, the wounded mother had forced her broken body back onto her feet. Her wings stretched wide, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Blood still dripped from her wounds, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. The dark dragon turned toward her and roared angrily. The mama dragon answered with a thunderous roar of her own. Then she charged. The two dragons crashed into each other like living mountains. Their claws slashed through the air as they fought across the rocks. Henry stared in shock. She's still fighting. The baby dragon chirped again from the broken egg, now half out of its shell. Henry quickly wrapped part of his jacket around the small creature. Above them, the other two dark dragons began diving toward the battle. Henry realized something terrifying. The mama dragon could barely fight one enemy. She could never defeat three. If he stayed here, the baby would die with her. Henry looked down the mountain. The town lights were far away, but still visible. If he could reach the research building, maybe the scientists could help. Maybe. Henry took a deep breath and held the tiny dragon carefully. "All right, little guy," he whispered. "Looks like it's just you and me now." Behind him, the sky exploded with fire as the dragons clashed violently. Henry turned and ran down the mountain as fast as he could. The baby dragon peeked out from the broken egg and made a tiny squeaking sound. Henry glanced down while running. The baby stared up at him with curious golden eyes. It tilted its head and sneezed. A tiny spark of fire popped out of its nose. Henry blinked. Then he laughed nervously while running. Well, that's new. But high above the mountain, one of the dark dragons had stopped fighting. It had seen Henry escape, and now it was coming after him. Fust! The shadow of its wings grew larger on the ground behind him. Henry's legs burned with exhaustion as he ran down the steep path. The baby dragon chirped again, almost happily, completely unaware of the deadly predator racing toward them. Henry looked back once. The enormous dragon was diving straight at them, its mouth glowing with fire. Henry realized the terrible truth. He would never reach the town in time. But suddenly, the baby dragon in his arms lifted its tiny head. Its small golden eyes began to glow brighter and brighter. Henry felt sudden heat spreading through his arms. "What are you doing?" he whispered. The baby dragon opened its mouth. And for a creature only seconds old, the power building inside it was impossible. The sky flashed with sudden golden light, and the dark dragon diving toward them suddenly looked afraid. Very afraid. The shadow of the dark dragon grew larger as it dived toward Henry like a falling mountain. The air roared around its wings, and fire glowed deep inside its open mouth. Henry could hear the monster coming. He knew he could not run any faster. His legs were already shaking from the long climb down the mountain. The town lights were still far below, small and distant like tiny stars. "This is bad, really bad," Henry muttered breathlessly. The baby dragon in his arms suddenly lifted its small golden head. Its eyes were glowing brighter now, shining like two tiny suns in the darkness. Henry felt heat spreading through the broken eggshell he was holding. "Hey, easy there," he whispered nervously. The baby dragon opened its mouth slightly. At first nothing happened. Then the air around them began to tremble. A strange golden light burst from the baby's body, spreading across Henry's arms like warm sunlight. The tiny dragon let out a small cry, soft, but filled with power far greater than its size. The dark dragon in the sky suddenly slowed. For the first time, fear appeared in its glowing red eyes. The baby dragon took a tiny breath. Then it sneezed. But this time it was not a tiny spark. A sudden beam of brilliant golden fire shot upward into the sky like lightning. The blast struck the diving dragon directly in the chest. Boom! The giant creature was thrown backward through the air, roaring in shock as its wings lost balance. It crashed against the rocky slope far above them, sending stones tumbling down the mountain. Henry stared in disbelief. The baby dragon blinked, looking just as surprised as he was. Then it made a tiny happy chirp. Henry slowly exhaled. "Okay, remind me never to underestimate a newborn dragon again." But the moment of relief did not last long. Another deafening roar shook the mountain. Henry turned his head toward the battle above. The mama dragon was still fighting. Her wounded body moved slowly now, but she refused to fall. One dark dragon lay injured nearby, but the third enemy dragon circled above her like a shadow waiting for the perfect moment. Henry's chest tightened. "She's not going to survive this," he whispered. The baby dragon looked up at him. Then it looked toward the sky where its mother was fighting. It chirped again, but this time the sound was sad. Henry's heart ached. For a moment he considered running again. If he kept going, he might still reach the town and save the baby. But something stopped him. He looked down at the tiny dragon in his arms. Then back at the mountain where the mother continued to fight alone. Henry sighed. "Well, Henry," he said quietly to himself, "you always wanted to do something important with your life." He adjusted his grip on the baby dragon and turned back toward the battle. "Let's go help your mom." The baby dragon chirped loudly, almost like it understood. Henry began climbing back up the rocky slope. Every step felt harder than the last, but he kept going. Above them, the final dark dragon attacked. It slammed into the mama dragon with terrifying force. The wounded mother crashed against the rocks, her wings breaking more stones as she struggled to stand again. The enemy dragon opened its jaws, preparing to finish the fight. Then a small human voice shouted from the darkness. "Hey!" Both dragons paused. Henry stood on a tall rock, holding the glowing baby dragon above his head. The enemy dragon stared at him in confusion. Henry swallowed nervously but forced himself to keep talking. "You want the baby, right?" he yelled. The dragon growled deeply. Henry nodded. "Yeah, I figured." The mama dragon weakly lifted her head when she saw Henry. Her golden eyes widened. Henry looked at her and smiled softly. "Don't worry. I've got a plan." The enemy dragon stepped closer, flames building inside its throat. Henry lifted the baby dragon a little higher. "All right, little guy," he whispered. "Time for that amazing sneeze again." The baby dragon tilted its head. Then it looked directly at the approaching enemy. Its golden eyes began glowing brighter than ever before. The dark dragon hesitated. Too late. The baby dragon opened its tiny mouth. This time the fire that exploded out was not a beam. It was a storm. Golden flames burst across the sky like a sunrise exploding in every direction. The powerful blast struck the enemy dragon and lifted it completely off the ground. The creature roared in terror as the blazing energy hurled it far into the clouds. Seconds later, its shadow disappeared into the night. Silence returned to the mountain. Henry slowly lowered the baby dragon, his arms shaking. Well, that worked better than expected. The baby dragon yawned sleepily. Then it curled up against Henry's chest like a tired kitten. Henry carefully walked toward the mama dragon. She was lying on the ground again, breathing slowly. Her wounds were still deep, but her eyes were calm now. She looked at the baby. The baby chirped happily and crawled from Henry's arms onto her large claw. The mama dragon gently wrapped her wing around the tiny creature. For a moment, the mountain was completely peaceful. Then the mama dragon lifted her head and looked at Henry. Her golden eyes studied him carefully. Henry scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. He. The giant dragon slowly lowered her head until it was right in front of him. Henry froze. Then the mama dragon gently touched his shoulder with the tip of her nose. It was soft. Grateful. Henry smiled. "You're welcome." The dragon slowly stood up again, though her movements were still weak. She spread her wings and carefully lifted the baby dragon onto her back. Before leaving, she looked at Henry one more time. For a second, Henry thought she might fly away forever. But instead, the mama dragon bent down again. And something unbelievable happened. She gently pushed one shining golden scale from her chest toward Henry. The scale glowed warmly in the moonlight. A gift. Henry picked it up carefully. Wow. The dragon let out a deep, peaceful rumble. Then she spread her massive wings and rose into the sky with her baby. Henry watched them disappear into the clouds as the first light of sunrise appeared on the horizon. The mountain was quiet again. Henry stood there alone, holding the glowing dragon scale in his hand. A simple janitor. The only human who had ever saved a dragon family. And somewhere high above the clouds, a baby dragon who had taken its first breath in his arms would one day grow strong. And it would never forget the human named Henry who did the impossible. Dragon.